3 of my siblings are engineers, and in Canada, when engineering students graduate, they take part in what's called an Iron Ring ceremony. This is where the students take an oath to practice engineering by ethical and professional standards. And they're given a ring to remind them of this obligation, which they wear on the pinky of their dominant hand. Doctors also take the Hippocratic Oath, vowing to uphold ethical standards for their patients. Now, I am in no way suggesting that the actions of us board game designers would have life or death consequences, but I do like the idea of groups making a vow to uphold certain principles of their profession, and I do believe there are certain golden rules that every board game designer should follow, in my opinion. So here is my board game designer's oath. Number 1, I will playtest other designers' games. When I first got involved with the board game design community, I ran a playtesting convention, and I invited a very well-known designer, and I was informed that he expects his games to be playtested, but he does not playtest other designers' games as a rule. Even though I was brand new to the industry, that never sat well with me. I find that approach amazingly selfish and does not align with the collaborative nature of this community. If every designer only expected others to test their games, no games would ever be tested. We would all just be stuck in a board game designer's standoff indefinitely. Protospiel is a group that runs in-person and online playtesting events, and they have a golden rule that gets even more specific. They say, put in as much playtesting time as you get out. Meaning, if 4 people spend 1 hour playtesting for you, you should aim to spend 4 hours playtesting for others. Playtesting other designers' games shows gratitude for the feedback that they gave you that is essential to improving and shaping your game. Almost every board game wouldn't exist if it were not for playtesters. So don't be like that guy. Be generous and reciprocal with your time and feedback to other designers. Number 2, I will thank playtesters in the rulebook if possible. There is another well-known designer who I have seen post to Facebook saying,
"Hey, if you playtested this game, can you let me know so I can thank you in the rulebook?"
Again, don't be like this guy. Keep track of every playtester's name during your playtests. Keep these names in a list so that if the game gets published, you have an updated record of every playtester who helped shape your game. You can, of course, post the full list to social media to make sure you didn't miss anybody, but don't just ask other people to remind you that they playtested your game. And I added the if possible to this one because some publishers might not let you include an acknowledgement section in the rulebook, but that's always something that I do expect to have in a rulebook, so that's something that you should talk to the publisher about. But because of space constraints and whatever, they might not have room for the entire playtester list. So work with the publisher on this. I would definitely push back because I think it's very important to acknowledge and thank all of the playtesters who helped shape the game. Number 3, I will be inspired by but not completely copy other designers' games. One of the biggest concerns of new designers is that their game idea will be stolen. They worry about trying to copyright or patent their game in an effort to try to protect it from the sticky hands of board game design thieves. In general, people completely stealing other designers' games does not happen very often. And the benefit of being open and collaborative with your game ideas far outweighs any risk of someone potentially stealing your idea and actually doing something with the idea. With that said, designers take inspiration from both published and unpublished games all the time, and that is totally fine. In fact, I always suggest playing as many games as possible to get inspiration for your own designs. But this means taking one element from one game and maybe one from another game and mixing it all up with your own additions to create something new. But if instead you rip off someone else's design and pretend that you made it, I will personally see that you are blacklisted from this community so fast, your head will spin. Number 4, if co-designing a game, I will put in as much effort as my partner. I know I've told this story before, but I'll quickly say it again. A very well-known designer reached out to me to co-design a game with him several years ago, when I only had one published game so far. I was obviously very excited, but it became clear that he expected me to do all the work, and him having his name on the project was enough. I worked my butt off for a year, coming up with the game concepts, doing all the research for the IP, testing the game, making updates to the prototype, while he did essentially nothing. The final straw for me was when we were going to test the game at a convention, and he filled out the information for the game and didn't even include my name as one of the designers. Not only was I one of the designers of the game, I was the primary designer of the game, and when I called him out on it, he said there wasn't enough space to include both of our names.
Sure, Jan.
Don't be like this guy. Are you noticing a pattern here? If you are designing a game with a partner, which I know a lot of people do, be a good co-designer. Put in as much effort as they do, or even more if they need support, as long as they also step up for you when you need it. If it is a one-sided co-design, get out of it. And don't co-design with others if you don't have the capacity or capability of being a good partner. Number 5, I will be honest with my feedback. One of the greatest benefits of playtesting with other designers is that they will usually be brutally honest. It would be great if they were tactful and kind with their feedback, but the most important thing is that they are honest. You're not helping your fellow designer by not telling them the elements of their game you didn't like, or were frustrating, or were possibly even broken. We owe it to each other to provide honest, helpful feedback, and the designer can decide what to do with that information. I do try to always find at least one positive thing to say about a game, but will always share what I don't think works as well. This also includes letting designers know if the game they designed already exists, or if it's very similar to another game. You might feel bad bursting someone's bubble, especially if they've clearly spent a lot of time or money on a game, but they need to have that information. And now for the flip side of this principle. Number 6, I will not get defensive when hearing playtester feedback. Arguing with your playtesters will not make your game better. You don't have to agree with the comments being made, but just take it all in, write it all down, and then decide where you want to go from there. I truly believe that one of the best indicators of whether or not someone will succeed as a board game designer is if they are grateful for the honesty and soak it all up like a sponge. If instead they get defensive or mad when playtesters aren't just gushing over how amazing the game is, you most likely will never see that person at a playtest meetup again. Number 7, I will wait until the end of a playtest to provide feedback.
I'm not finished. First off, oh my God, can you let me do what I need to do?
A lot of designers struggle with this. I think it's because we get so excited when playing another designer's game and just love talking about game design. But we owe it to each other to actually play the game before we give our feedback. The designer has a lot going on when playtesting their game. They don't also need to take notes about feedback while the game is happening, or have to try to keep the playtesters focused on playing the game before giving feedback. Of course, if there is a small, obvious adjustment that can be suggested or pointed out, that's fine. But if you launch into why you don't think the theme works with the central mechanic before you've even played a turn, that is not helpful or respectful to the designer. Any thoughts I have during a playtest, I will usually write down so that I remember it later during the feedback portion of the playtest. Number 8, I will not redesign another designer's game during a playtest. I know this one can be tough. I find myself doing this too. But as playtesters, our job is to convey what we enjoyed about the game and what was frustrating for us, and then let the designer reach their own conclusions. Of course, making suggestions can be helpful, but if you start to completely redesign the game while the designer just sits there like a deer in the headlights, take a step back and remember that this is their game, and it's up to them to decide what to do with playtester feedback. Number 9, I will always provide feedback even for a genre I don't enjoy. I can't tell you how many times playtesters have said,
I don't know, I don't like party games,
after playing one of my party game prototypes. This is completely unhelpful. You can tell the designer you don't normally play party games if you want, but you should still be able to provide feedback on the mechanics of the game, the theme, the pacing, the player interaction, and so on. Simply saying you don't like these types of games and leaving it at that is a throwaway statement. Look at the game objectively and try to see it from the perspective of someone who does like those kinds of games. You can always find something helpful to share with a designer, even if it's for a genre of game you might not personally enjoy. And number 10, I will end a playtest if it is not going well or is dragging on too long. Don't make your playtesters suffer. If a game is clearly broken, meaning there is a major design flaw that makes it unplayable, or if it's dragging on, or if the playtesters are clearly not enjoying themselves, end the playtest. And don't be completely discouraged by this. This happens to every designer. It just means you have some work to do before getting it back to the table, or possibly you might want to archive the game and focus on something else. Or if it's a more involved game with a longer playtime, have shorter playtests by setting the game up as if it had already been played for an hour or so, and have the playtesters continue from there. Asking playtesters to sit down for a full 3-hour playtest is a big ask, especially in the earlier stages of development. And there you have it. my board game designer's oath. Let me know what you think in the comments, and also let me know if you have any other principles that you would add. Be sure to follow me on social media at Pam Walls Game Design, and I'll see you in the next video.